All right, welcome to episode 2. I am excited to record this episode right now. I've been thinking about what should I talk about on this one, and I just felt like I needed to share a little bit more of my story and what I've been doing. And so I'm going to do that. Um, I started my self development, like really started my self development journey probably over the past 2 or 3 years. A little bit more about me. I've struggled with depression since I was really a teenager. That was the first time I went to um, therapy for depression. There's some things that I struggled with as a teenager and still struggle with that have, affected my self love, my self esteem, and self confidence for a long time. And so that was really the first time that I went to therapy and was diagnosed really with depression was as a teenager. Um, in college, after I was married, I was convinced that I was going to be a dentist, pediatric dentist. That's what I've been being a pediatric dental assistant for a number of years and really enjoyed it. And I've always been really good with kids, and kids have kind of been drawn to me. Um, and so that's what I was convinced I was going to do. So I was doing exercise science as my major and really enjoyed that because I've been an athlete my whole life. I've always exercised in some way and played sports and whatever. So it's like this is how I can get the pre-dental requirements done and enjoy it a lot more than just doing like biology would for me, right? So I got to the point in my degree where I had done everything I possibly could except for human anatomy class. So I was at UVU and Utah Valley University, and if anyone that knows the professors that teach the anatomy class, at least back then, I don't know if they're the same, they prided themselves on it being the most difficult anatomy class in the state of Utah, and like made it overly difficult for like no reason. I mean, if you passed, you knew it proved you really knew your stuff, right? I would study for hours and hours and hours and quiz myself and know what I was supposed to do. I knew the answers, and then come quiz or test time, I would fail. And it just that kept going, kept happening, and I was like, "What is going on?" I was getting so down on myself, and I went and I officially got diagnosed with depression and ADHD. I could not pass that class. I couldn't memorize the stuff I needed to memorize. And so I changed my major to what I thought would be better information systems because I was like, well, I could be the in between the tech people and the business people. That'll be good. I'll be good at that. And it was more coding than I thought. And I ended up dropping out of school and of college. I already had my associate's degree at that point. But yeah, I felt really crappy about myself. And shortly after that, I got a job, found out that Anna was pregnant with Kate and whatever. And yeah, so that was really when I was first diagnosed with ADHD and depression, right? So fast forward, and about a year, I ended up leaving that job that I had. I was very successful at it. And after 5 months, I was promoted from sales rep to manager. And then after that, it just got toxic. It was really bad. So I ended up quitting and we moved from Utah to North Carolina. And that's when I started my self employment journey. I started doing marketing because why did I choose it? I thought I could make money with it. And I saw other people doing it and was like, well, I could do that. Not because I actually wanted to learn marketing or was excited about that, just because I thought I could make money with it. So I built something and I started out with Instagram and built from there. And never built anything huge, but it got us by for the most part over the past few years. And but as part of that, I fell into pretty deep depression, and it was really kind of culminated in 2020. There was about a week, and I think it was like May 2020. I think a week or so where I wasn't able to function. I was not functional. I essentially was just stuck in bed. And my goal each day was if I can get out of bed, give my wife and kids a hug and a kiss, it was a successful day. If I could give them a hug and a kiss and tell them I loved them. If I could shower, was an awesome day. It was rough. And those of any that are listening to this that have struggled with depression know exactly what I'm talking about. It sucks because when you're in that, it doesn't make sense. Like you're sitting there thinking about, why am I sad? I don't know. This doesn't make sense, but you just can't. You just can't. And after, I don't know, a week or so of this, I even had like a virtual therapy session with my therapist at the time, and didn't do anything for me. I had kind of been on and off medication for a little bit, and I didn't like how I felt on medication and stuff. So at this point, I messaged one of my family members that had talked about how she had I'd seen her journey with depression and being diagnosed with depression, being put on medication, and like, oh, this is how people normally feel. And then a little bit like a year or so later, talking about how she was off medication and it healed her depression. So I messaged her. I was like, what's going on? Like, how I need help. I can't do this. I don't want to be, this isn't my life. I can't have this be my life anymore. So I went and met with her. Me and Anna did, my wife. And she's like, read this book by Dr. Kelly Brogan called A Mind of Your Own. And so she talks about in this book that depression isn't what people think. It's not as much genetic as it is epigenetic or different things. It's influenced by a lot different things than we think. It's not necessarily it's not always necessarily a chemical imbalance in the brain, right? That's not exactly always how it is for people. And so it just opened me to these different possibilities and understandings of what depression actually was. So she's a master NLP and hypnosis trainer, and she was doing a hypnosis training. So she invited me to do that. And so I went and did that. And I volunteered for as the guinea pig for everything, all the demonstrations, everything. And she talked throughout it. I think it was a combination of the hypnosis and how the language she used, probably the NLP side of that we are at cause for our life. Our life is a result of the choices that we've made, right? And those kind of things combined with the book, combined with hypnosis, helped me to get out of what I was stuck in. Really helped me to kind of back. I can function again. And so hypnosis really worked wonders for me there. And so I actually went on, and I'm now a certified hypnotherapist, right? And I definitely believe that it works and can be extremely, extremely effective. The thing is, you have to believe that it works as well, or it won't. There's a lot of a lot of things about hypnosis that a lot of misconceptions, we'll say, about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. There's no part of it do you ever lose control of yourself. That's not a thing. But yeah, neither here nor there. As far as my journey. So after that, I started feeling a lot better about myself. And end of the year, I started working with a company and there was this person that saw me for the brilliant, and validated a lot of my experience and saw that I knew a lot of things and that I was really smart and could do a lot. And it felt awesome because I hadn't had that ever, really. I knew that I could do a lot of things and I knew that I had a lot of knowledge, but I hadn't found anyone that actually believed in me in that way. So I ended up joining and working for this person and joining their business. And because of the validation I received from this person and the love that I felt, I probably ignored some red flags. But I ended up moving to a different state, and got close to him and the other people that I worked with, and it ended up not working out. And towards the end of it, I fell into depression again. And it was really hard. And we moved back to North Carolina from that other state in November of 2021, right? Yeah, of 2021. So at the end of 2021, I decided I was going to do a program from Nick Peterson, Dan Nicholson, and Randy Massengale called the CCA program. Stands for Certainty Certified Advisors. Now, this is basically teaching their methodology, Dan's methodology, along with some of the things that Nick teaches and that Randy Massengale teaches. If you want to know their credentials, they're like Dan and Randy, super credentialed at the wazoo. Like Randy Massengale was a senior advisor for Bill Gates in the 90s when Bill Gates was building Microsoft. Like Randy is, he knows his stuff and he's an awesome human. Dan Nicholson is basically a human computer when it comes to numbers and stuff. He's one of the top CPAs ever to take the CPA exam. He helped write Microsoft accounting standard, like tax accounting standard. And now he's doing some amazing things. He's a USA Today bestselling author, I think a couple other ones. But yeah, he has an awesome book called Rigging the Game. If you want to read about that, it kind of introduces some of the things that I have been certified in. Well, I haven't graduated yet. I have to do my graduation presentation at one of the in-person events. And so that'll happen soon, hopefully. But at the beginning of 2022 is when that program started. And so I started that program, and a big part of it was Randy Massengale's piece where he talked about playing your game and the importance of that. And I just started to do a lot of reflection and thought about what my game is. How do I show up best? How have I shown up best in my past? As a child, what was I like? How did I show up in the world? How did I live? And those kind of things. So I had conversations with my parents about what I was like as a kid. And it was interesting because neither of them remembered. And I realized it was because my mom, her parents were going through a really messy divorce. And my mom was kind of stuck in the middle. And it was really traumatic for her. And so and I think my dad won't admit it, but I think he doesn't remember because he was, caught up in that a little bit in supporting my mom and the stress that comes along with that. He just says he's getting old. But neither of them really remembered. Luckily, my mom had taken good notes or journals and stuff like that. So, but it was interesting, right? That she was like, I don't even remember. I don't know. And she felt really bad because of that. But I understood, because during this process of reflecting on playing my game, I also was thinking about my children, what their games are, how they show up best. And my son, who's 4 now, I realized, like at that point, I realized I was like, oh, I have a very short fuse when it comes to him. Why is that? So I started doing some reflecting and realized that he was born during one of my depressive episodes. And I don't remember much of him as a little kid, as like a baby or toddler, because I was very depressed and it made me really sad. But it also allowed me to kind of know exactly like how my mom felt. She wasn't emotionally available and didn't remember because of her own things. And I realized like, oh, that's how I was with Lincoln. So I knew exactly how she felt. And I don't blame her at all for that. But I realized that that's probably why I didn't have the relationship with my son as a baby that I did with his older sister. And so I started to really focus on making sure I was more patient with him, but also seeing his strengths for who they are. Because a lot of times the things that are his strengths are the things that bothered me so much, because it's this combination that's just infuriating as a parent, right? He's extremely smart, extremely active, extremely curious, and extremely independent, all of those things. And when you get all of that together, it's just, oh man, some of the stories about Lincoln are just hilarious. But he's awesome. And it's really helped me to be able to change our relationship and start to heal the damage that was done to our relationship. And I hope it can make a big difference for him in his life. And it's really changed our relationship a lot. Now, going back to me with my depression, while I was focusing on these things and learning these different tools, one of the things I did as well was pattern recognition. And I started to look at, okay, what are the things the behavior patterns that I have leading up to when like a depressive episode starts, right? And so I recognized that usually one of the biggest things was I would stay up too late for a number of nights in a row, like 2 to 4 a.m., right? And that was either because I got into like a flow in work where I just lost track of time. And then I was like, oh crap, it's 3 a.m. Ugh. And then I would go to bed and sleep in and again start a doom loop of negative self-talk, like you're so dumb, why are you, whatever. And I would repeat the process the next night. I would stay up too late gaming with some of my buddies or whatever it was, right? And I realized that was one of the patterns. I would do that for 3-4 nights in a row, and then I would start to fall into a doom loop, as one of my mentors calls it. And I really like that. It just makes sense. So doom loop is when you start to have that negative self-talk, and especially those with depression know it's just this spiral of you do something that you shouldn't, you start to just talk negatively to yourself, which causes you to repeat the behavior, causes you to think even more about how bad and how dumb you are, whatever. And it doesn't help. And it's this, again, doom loop. And so I realized that that's what was happening a lot of the time at the beginning of some of these depressive episodes. So I talked to my wife and we strategized about how to break those patterns, right? One of the other things as well, and hopefully this is useful. One of the other things is that I've realized is where your focus goes, grows. I had been focusing about so much lack in my life, and that's all that I was thinking about, right? And so as I started to shift my focus to what I had and what I was grateful for, my attitude about my life and those that were in it changed a lot. I became a lot more full of love. And as I shifted more towards gratitude to Christ and my heavenly parents and stuff as well, it just was a huge shift for me, right? One of the other things was journaling. I've never been super consistent with journaling, but just being able to write. And I actually got a tablet. It's called a Supernote. I prefer writing on that to pen and paper. It just feels better. Part of that is because I have a hand injury that makes my muscle in my thumb cramp up really quick writing with a pen and paper, and I don't cramp up on this other thing. There's just a number of different tools that I've learned in this toolbox that I've built over the years that have helped me. And now today, I don't really struggle with the depression and stuff anymore. And while it still kind of sometimes sneaks in a little bit, I have the tools to be able to nip it right in the bud. And that's probably been one of the most important things that I've learned and developed over these past couple of years, is a toolbox to be able to identify, change my behavior, but also to recover from when bad things happen, or a lot quicker, and recover those resources. Usually, if I would have that pattern that I was talking about, it would just kind of spin me out for at least a couple of days. Somewhat recently, I had that happen, and it spun me out for a night. And then I was able to the next day be good to go because of the tools that I have developed. Again, it's been a process, but I feel like it's an important thing to discuss and to get out there. Is depression isn't necessarily what people make it out to be. And it's not necessarily something that's out of your control. I won't speak for everybody. I'm not a mental health professional. This is from my experience and my research, right? But just open that loop. Think about the possibility of what if depression isn't something you had to take medication for the rest of your life? Because I've been off of medication since 2020. I've been in the best place mentally that I've been in a long, long time. And I think my family, my wife would vouch for that as well. And this is part of the message that I feel that I need to share with everyone out there is the possibility of these things and how important this is. I am just going to wrap up the episode with this. I hope that if any of this resonates with you, please reach out if you're struggling with mental health or anything like that, especially depression or whatever it may be. Reach out if you need support. Please reach out. I'll see you on the next episode.